Chapter 17. Ain't Any Good. Sky and Jessie continued their training on target practice and foraging wild food. The morning tired her, and Sky needed a break. She looked over the novels in the Cole's tiny library. It was clear they were not big readers, but they had a few how-to books that seemed promising. Sky pulled out a book on water collection. Her training needed to include anything and everything that could help her through the upcoming years. This may just be what saved her one day. Sky took the volume outside, settling back against the rough bark of a large tree. The cold night had brought a beautiful, sunny morning, and though a slight chill hung in the air, it wasn't so much she was uncomfortable. Dylan and Wade were busy with projects of their own, and Jessie was exploring to the side of the house whenever the men didn't call the boy over for his help. From where she sat, Sky could keep an eye on Jessie. It still made her nervous when he was out of her sight. A few pages into the instruction manual and Sky had a new appreciation of Wade's roof fascination. It was part of their water collection system. Having lived where a public water system had always been available, she'd never really thought a lot about how the water got to her. She'd just turned on the tap and it poured out, pretty much whenever she needed it. But here they didn't have that luxury, so the ability to get water depended mostly on Wade's creation. She glanced from the book's diagram to the cabin's roof and gutters, then back to the book again. Sky traced the picture of the holding tank as she studied the pipes attached to their own reservoir of water. Wade had followed the manual to the letter. It was perfect. What an ingenious system. A sharp clanging and a few loud curses came from Dylan as he worked under his old truck. Though he had a new one, he still tinkered with the red one from time to time. Sky bit the inside of her cheek as she debated the pros and cons of approaching Dylan. After this morning, she was nervous, but she had to face him sometime. She stood, called out to Jessie and pointed to her destination. "Jessie, stay in the yard. I will be right over here." "I know," Jessie said, his words drawn out and resigned.
Dylan watched Sky's feet as she approached the truck and closed his eyes, sighing. He needed a little breathing room. The emotions twisting through him were bad enough without her being near him. Sky stopped at the side of the truck, then knelt down and stuck her head under it to peer at Dylan. "What are you working on?" "Brakes." When Sky seemed to want more, he asked, "What have you been up to?" "I'm reading a book about the water collection thing you have going on up there on the roof. I had no idea." "It's a great system." Dylan banged on the truck a couple more times. "Crazy getting it all in place, but it works real good." "I bet. I just hadn't, noticed. Something else for me to learn." Sky laughed. "Sometimes, it seems like I am getting another college education living up here." Dylan snorted and hammered the truck again. Silence. Maybe she would go away. Instead, Sky dropped down and scooted under the vehicle, settling beside him. "No, clearly not." Hopes dashed, Dylan tried a different tactic. He put Sky to work. "Can you hand me that wrench sticking out of the toolbox there?" Sky's brows came together as she reached toward the pile of tools. She hesitated a moment before choosing one and handing it over, studying Dylan's face as she gave it to him. When he took it without complaints, she smiled. Dylan worked on the brakes without a word, hoping Sky would get bored and leave. No doubt she was feeling bad about this morning and trying to make up for it, but he wasn't in the mood. When there was a break in his clanging, Sky took her hands from her ears and asked, "Can I help?" "Nope. I can help." "You can teach me." "Nah, you can't. Go read." "Dylan, don't be rude." "Is it this morning?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be insensitive." "I ain't being rude. I don't want to talk about this." "You wanted to read. Go read." Sky glanced away from him to the other end of the truck but didn't move. He was trying so hard, couldn't she be happy with that? Dylan gritted his teeth, and as if dealing with a small child, he said, "There's nothing wrong, Sky. We're all good. We're good." She stared, obviously not believing him. "Yeah. Good." He stared right back. It was, after all, his specialty. Sky broke first, turning her head away and heaving a little sigh. "Okay. I have the ingredients for some apple muffins. I guess I'll go make those." Apple muffins were Dylan's favorite, and she knew it. He watched her wiggle herself back out from under the truck and head to the house. Dylan sighed. She must feel pretty bad. Whatever was going on here wasn't any good for either one of them. Something needed to be done to give them both some peace. Soon, the enticing smell of baking muffins drew Dylan, almost against his will, into the cabin. When he entered the house, he saw Sky dealing with the hot little pieces of bread. Without speaking, he walked over and pulled them from the pan for her. He took an apple muffin for himself and sat it on the table, waiting for it to cool as he sat down in one of the kitchen chairs. Sky poured herself a glass of water and held the pitcher up with an inquiring look. At his nod, she filled one for him and sat down on the opposite side of the table. Dylan sighed and rubbed his hand over his face, then looked back at Sky. "You know, I've been thinking. I could clean out the cabin next door if you'd like." A confused look covered Sky's face as she sipped her water. "What for?" "For you to live in."